Welcome to another episode of our mini podcast, I Built a Company That Makes a Difference by B1, where we talk to founders of sustainable businesses to get their quick take on how and why they started their companies and some lessons that they've learned along the way. Today, we're talking to Callum Miller, the co founder of Ethy, a sustainable certification aimed at fighting greenwashing and giving shoppers clear, meaningful guidance in choosing environmentally superior products. Callum, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited to learn more about Ethy and what exactly it is that you guys are doing.
Hi, Amber. Thank you very much for having me on. It's a real pleasure to be here today. And thank you for making the time. I can't wait to explain some more.
Callum, so great to have you here. Thank you so much. This is actually our first podcast with a UK guest. So thank you very much for being the first one here. Can we jump right off and you can tell me a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about Ethy? A lot of our listeners are small business owners or aspiring small business owners, especially around sustainability, climate impact, etc. So a lot of my questions in our conversation today will revolve around that. But let's just jump off with getting to know you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice to meet you. Thank you very much for having me on today. Really appreciate it. So yeah, I guess to begin with kind of my background, which is fairly limited. I'm 28 years old. I don't have a huge amount of background. But I guess, yeah, growing up, especially in my teenage years, I think football was my life. I kind of played academy level for kind of 7, 8 years at Tottenham Hotspur, Queen's Park Rangers, alongside lots of professionals who made it. I didn't quite make it. I sort of declined at the age of 18 and didn't quite make the grade to go into that professional level. But yeah, really enjoyed those years. And I think I took a lot of learnings from them. So yeah, brought them forward into my kind of future career. And then I worked kind of out of school as a paramedic for a year and a half, which was interesting. I quite quickly realized again I wasn't cut out to be a paramedic. I think it takes a certain type of person to do that type of job. I have the utmost respect for paramedics. It's an incredibly kind of testing and important job. Again, I thought took some great learnings from that. And then I went back to university for a few years, decided to just kind of go with something that I really enjoy and study something I'm really passionate about, which was history. So I spent 3 years at the University of Portsmouth down on the south coast of England, which I really enjoyed doing something that I kind of thoroughly enjoyed. And then took another bit of a diversion and went into a more kind of corporate job, kind of tacky job, working as a technical business analyst for 2 years in the rail sector, and then a project manager in a similar company, again in the rail sector. And I guess a bit of my kind of interests alongside football and sport. So I think the great outdoors and nature has always been kind of from a very young age really quite important to me. It's where I find my peace, tranquility. I used to spend kind of most of my summers going up into the Scottish Highlands, doing lots of hiking, just spending time in isolation, surrounded by nature. Always felt really comfortable doing so. And I think this kind of translated into more of an interest in sustainability. So kind of clicked that the two are really interlinked. And I came to the realization that without sustainability, actually, we're going to lose a huge portion of the natural world. I think we've seen that with the Amazon, the rainforest over there. We've lost, I think, over 13% from deforestation. So that really, I think it was from the interest in nature that sparked that interest in sustainability, which then led me into wanting to go into a kind of career around sustainability, whether that's kind of as an employee or starting up my own company. I wasn't sure at the time. But then came, I think, a realization that I was a bit fed up with my 9 to 5 and kind of working as a small cog in a large machine where I didn't feel like I had a huge amount of impact. So I would say, in terms of kind of the initial spark that created Ethy, it really came from three factors. Firstly, it was that personal interest in sustainability. Secondly, a fascination in tech through my kind of career. And then thirdly, perhaps a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. So those three kind of factors combined, and I decided to create something which I wasn't entirely sure what would it be, how would it manifest. So through market research and kind of my own personal pain points, I realized something needed to be done for the increasing number of people who want to actually make a difference, and want to kind of reduce their impact on the environment and really be part of the solution to climate change. And people are really expressing at the time anyway, and still now, there is a huge pain point around we want to do good when we spend money and kind of reduce our impact, but it's just too difficult, too confusing. So Ethy's mission really from the get-go has always been to make it easier for people to shop in a more responsible way, without promoting overconsumption, but accepting that consumption is a part of our day-to-day life, our culture, and really believing there is a more responsible way to do so. So what we took to market, myself and also two co-founders back in 2020, was an open banking solution initially, which was basically enabling people to get feedback whenever they made a payment in regard to the sustainability credentials of the business. So let's say I go into my local supermarket, I spend money on my debit card, credit card, and then I'm automatically fed back information on the environmental and social impact of that business.
Based on the vendor?
Based on the vendor, yeah. So accessing quite a large database and kind of sending you push notifications. So it's meant to be a seamless experience, just something for everyone to use quite quickly, quite easily, just to stay informed and reflect on their spending. So we launched an MVP in 2020 for this, and then quickly found out that it was going to be really quite difficult to execute in terms of people don't really trust, I guess, a new brand when it comes to banking.
Oh, interesting.
Lots of kind of concerns around that, and the adoption was quite slow. But yeah, I guess from a feedback perspective, it was really quite a useful time. We were very close to our early adopters, and really kind of used them to guide forward the development of the business from there. And then came the Green Claims Code. Have you heard of the Green Claims Code?
No, I haven't.
It was kind of the first legislature from the UK government around marketing and sustainability. It was back in 2021, which kind of introduced a form of regulation for businesses to follow when communicating their sustainability credentials, really to make sure they're not misleading, which feeds into greenwashing, which is all really around greenwashing, and the fact that so many claims made are really kind of misleading for consumers. So we decided to reposition Ethy around this, and kind of be a solution for businesses to ensure they aren't misleading consumers when they discuss sustainability. And what we've developed is a verification model for businesses to substantiate their claims, so to prove back them, get that independent stamp of approval, and then from that, the tech for them to further communicate those commitments in a much more clear and transparent way. And this is all underpinned by a framework of standards. So businesses can apply to be recognized under a particular standard, whether that's environmental or social, all the way from kind of carbon reduction activities to eliminating waste and plastic in supply chains, and then essentially evidence back those claims and communicate those through our technology. And the kind of response has been really good. We've had several hundred businesses over the last 2 years deploy the Ethy solution, from Intrepid Travel in the travel sector to Skin and Me in personal care. And it's really, yeah, really exciting to see the community build up and ultimately kind of build that impact. So yeah, that's really where we are today.
That's amazing. Okay. I have kind of two areas of questioning that I want to get into. Your story is very interesting. You've done a lot for being 28. So one section is, let's just explore a little bit of what you've learned and some of the lessons and experiences that you've had, and you're taking them into being an entrepreneur. And then the other part is Ethy as a business. I'm super interested in Ethy, how brands utilize your service, and how individuals utilize your service as well. But let's backtrack a little bit. Can you talk to me? So that's I mean, a lot of third-party businesses have come up off the back of open banking. From personal finance management to extension of banking applications and other things. This is what you were describing here. Your first foray is a really unique application of open banking. So the folks that you talk to, the adopters, customers, people that you were really close to, and you mentioned this earlier, people just really want to reduce their impact on the environment. Could you describe a little bit for us and our viewers how you might categorize these folks? Is it your age peers in general? Is it a specific, is it folks, urban folks who are living in big city centers? Who are they? And how might we, I don't want to say classify, but categorize them? Who are we? When you think about people who want climate change, we tend to, I think, probably based thanks to media, but also thanks to kind of the use of social media, we think of young people, but that's not the only demographic that are really looking to change how they consume products. What have you found in your research through these two projects?
Yeah, I think kind of what you just said there is probably quite accurate in terms of the assumption is it's going to be Gen Z, millennial audiences who are kind of really at the center, which I think is true to an extent. They are very, very engaged with a more sustainable way of shopping, as you'd expect. But there's also kind of surprising demographics, maybe unsurprising as well in some ways, who are also really, really engaged with this topic. I think families, mothers and fathers, who want to create a better future for their children, that they're really looking to do so, especially in the homes and the kind of food and products they provide for their children. So that's definitely an area which was a bit of a surprise to us in terms of the kind of early adopters and the people who have championed what we're doing. But really, I think it's at this point, everyone to an extent is kind of engaged in some way or another. And I think the danger in the past has been it's a really either or situation. Either you are interested in this or you're not at all. And what we're beginning to realize is actually everyone has a certain interest and has a certain role to play. And I think it's actually quite a damaging message to put out there that not everyone can be engaged. I think we really do need more inclusivity and kind of really open the doors to everyone being part of that journey, because it very much is a journey. It's something you begin doing and you build up over time, kind of one swap at a time, which I think is really the way to go. So yeah, I think everyone to an extent. There are obviously some key demographics. I do think disposable income probably is quite an important factor. There is a price tag attached with more sustainable products and services at the moment, just because they're being produced in a more responsible way that comes with higher costs. And I think that is something that needs to be addressed over time. It's not going to happen overnight. But we also do see money saving and kind of ways to reduce your spend by basically wasting less and using products for longer. So that initial outlay over time actually can result in savings. So it's not always a case of it's going to cost more. But yeah, it's quite a complicated landscape at the moment. But I do think, like I said, everyone has some sort of involvement to an extent.
I think that's exactly right. And that's what we're seeing on the B1 side as well, is that there's very little absolutely not, I'm totally not interested in this thing. Climate change, sustainability, environmental sustainability, recycling, these are all things and concepts that have kind of entered our common lexicon now. And what I think is really cool about Ethy is the mission and the drive to just incorporate this step by step into everyday life. And everyday life, as you rightly pointed out, looks different for lots of different people. Where you are in the country, where you are in the world, what does that look like? Your access to things that would be considered more ethically or sustainably produced. Your access to, refilleries, refinery, things, composting, your access to that based on where you live and your socioeconomic level. So the idea that actually it's not a binary argument. We're way past that. It's not either you're an eco warrior or not. Everybody is somewhere in between. And what I think is really cool about Ethy is you guys are showing people how to do this, giving people information about specific brands, alternatives here and there, and letting people understand what the impact is. And really through content marketing, through all of the education that you guys are doing, educating people about how, just step by step, one thing at a time. If it's one thing a day, what if it's one thing a month? If it's swapping something out, if it's using an alternative, you're reducing your impact on the environment, which is really cool.
Absolutely. I think that's that's the way to go, one step at a time.
Yeah, now it's part of our lives, right? And it is. I've seen. I'm You're 28. Let's say that I'm a couple of years older than you. No, I'm 40. So I do remember, like, it's been a really fast, it feels like, um, journey from, you know, climate change, and this kind of conversation is really for a fringe minority, to, of serious activists that are, willing to disrupt all modern life, to, no, this is just, everybody is talking about this. Is not even a separate conversation. We had a crop of interns who were, between 16 and 18 last summer, and to hear them just talk about, this is common sense, this is not a separate conversation, this is part of our lives, and how they integrate these things, whether it's clothes swapping apps, or of course we recycle, of course, it's been such a change in the last 20 years, and that's really cool to see as well. All right, can you talk about, because I did not know that you had done so many different things before starting Ethy. Can you talk about some of the biggest lessons learned so far? Let's do it in two parts. Biggest lessons learned to take you to found Ethy, and then I'll talk to you about biggest lessons learned as an entrepreneur. So, like, all of you, football, paramedic, like that's a deviation from the, or maybe it's not, I don't know, from athletics. But can you talk to me about that first part of life, of your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to your point around kind of biggest lessons learned and how that links into that trajectory, I guess, to where I am now. I guess it says that you should try lots of things and just kind of don't be afraid to try something, realize you don't like it, and then take a different course. I think risk taking is quite important to an extent. It's very easy to kind of get stuck in a certain pathway and kind of play it safe. I mean, everyone has different characters and different ambitions, but I think just get yourself out there and kind of try new things, learn, fail. It's all good. So yeah, I think that's kind of I guess set me up quite well. I wouldn't say the football and the paramedic stuff's directly applicable, but in terms of life lessons and ultimately everything's about people and kind of working with people, communicating, building teams, and being productive as a team. So I think from football, when you're kind of working with 11 or 10 of the team members, to working in an ambulance with two other paramedics and assistants, it's all about working as a team, as a unit, and being as, like I said, productive as possible in that unit, as it is in a kind of a startup as well.
So you mentioned about the Green Claims Code, and as you were describing it, I was like, yes, I do. I've seen a lot of things in the news lately, because companies in the UK are getting dinged and fined for this. This is an actual thing. It's not lip service. Well, to a certain extent, it's not lip service. People are getting fined for this. So you mentioned how important to you, kind of being outdoors, the tranquility of the outdoors, for you as individually. Was there just an inflection point for you where you were like, this has got to stop, this everybody's saying everything as a marketing brand, we're sustainable, we promote whatever, just whatever, and claims not being true? Was there an inflection point for you to just say, you know what, I've got to do something, um this is not right? Or when you made that switch over from your first project to Ethy, how did you guys, and you and your co-founders, just like say, this is the thing that we need to do to help uh, people understand what they're buying?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was like a kind of, I probably couldn't pinpoint an exact moment. It was more a um, building up, like I said, through a personal interest in my day-to-day life, kind of going vegetarian, eliminating plastic, using reusable products, trying to follow circular principles, and actually finding it quite enjoyable as well. I didn't find it to be a drag. It was you kind of get in the habit of doing it. I found it quite an enjoyable process to go through. And I think it was through that over time, like I said, coupled with the fact that I wasn't entirely intent with my current 9 to 5 job, that I thought, how about I just combine these these two interests and actually do something which I feel is fundamentally worthwhile. I'm not kind of sitting here to say we are going to be the be-all and end-all solution. We want to be a small part of it. And I think it takes thousands of businesses to come together with that shared mission to really make it happen, which I think is a really great thing about this industry. Yes, it's still competitive and there's a marketplace and you're competing for customers, but it's also very inclusive and very collaborative, which we've really found over the last 3 years. We have some really great partnerships with like-minded businesses, and it's actually been really enjoyable getting to know them, which I don't think it's probably not the same story across every industry. It's one of the special things in this space.
That's really enjoyable. That's joyous, and such an advantage when you can, well, you can compete and collaborate at the same time. So that's a really cool thing about this industry. You're right. So then you just mentioned you want to be a small part of this movement, this change in consumer behavior and in corporate behavior as well. What then is kind of I don't know how far out we want to look, 2023 plans, 3-year plan, 5-year plan? What's the ambition for Ethy?
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate kind of mission is to be the kind of the source of trust internationally for conscientious individuals who want to shop in a more sustainable way. And to get to that stage, we really just need to build up the community, find as many like-minded organizations and businesses to be part of the movement, to share the message, and to put this more credible and accurate way of communicating sustainability into practice. Our kind of, I guess, our short-term plans are also to build up the kind of individual audience. It's not just engaging businesses. We also want to build up an audience of like-minded people, which we're doing at the moment. We have around 20,000 visitors to the website every month. We have a huge ambassador network. So we are really people focused. We want to be right down on the ground, speaking directly to our users and to our businesses as well. So yeah, going back to your original question, I think it's to be this globally recognized source of trust and go-to platform for, I guess, sustainability with integrity.
Awesome. Okay, that sounds great. So you mentioned you have several hundred brands on board. I imagine you have conversations with a lot of them, a lot of the business owners and the management. 2 questions. One, what are some of the biggest mistakes, or let's say mistakes and challenges you see business owners making when they're trying to promote or their sustainable business, or just get this idea across that we care about sustainability, and how do we market this, and how do we get this across to our consumers? And then the other part of it is, some of the biggest mistakes that you guys have made in your several year journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's several quite common mistakes which we see businesses making, which are probably similar to the mistakes we're making. We're also a sustainability focused business. I think first and foremost, it's just confusing their customers with environmental jargon, acronyms, just taking what is a really complicated topic anyway in sustainability. It's a really vast, ever-changing topic, and not breaking it down into layman's terms and just making it very easy to understand. Even looking at terms like kind of net zero, which is massively used all over the website, all over the online space, and by governments, but we've come to find that almost half of us don't know what it means fully, which I think is testament to the fact that we need to move away from this jargon and just make it super simple. So I think that's probably the first mistake and the most common mistake we see. And then it's probably also going back to our previous point around potentially alienating people by having this really forceful messaging which says you have to do this or you have to do that to be part of this community, which really isn't very, very inclusive. So I think having that kind of open arms approach where we're here if you need us, we're here to support you through this journey, wherever you are along that journey, and we can suit you. I think that's a much better kind of standpoint to have. And I think I guess one of the mistakes on the sustainability side in terms of actually implementing sustainable practices, which I think is getting a lot of attention now, is a lot of businesses are jumping to carbon offsetting very quickly without addressing the carbon output of their current business model, which really should be the first port of call for businesses when they're looking to minimize their CO2 footprint. So looking at areas like renewable energies, circular principles, having more sustainable options for your employees, energy efficiency in the workspace or factories. These are kind of areas which should be tackled first and foremost, as opposed to simply offsetting your carbon emissions, which is probably an easier thing to go to, but not as effective.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Okay. That last one, that's a good point. That's a good tip. And this next question, it might be obvious, but for you who's really at the forefront, I want to ask it anyway, which is, why is greenwashing so problematic for consumers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real problem. I think quite often it's viewed in terms of, okay, it's a bit of a white lie when really it's not. That there's some real kind of tangible impacts of greenwashing in terms of misleading consumers and people into buying unsustainable goods and unsustainable services without really knowing the true impact behind those purchasing decisions. And I think there's also an issue from the perspective of businesses who have genuine intentions to do good, that they're kind of getting caught in the crossfire to an extent. And there's a new trend called green hushing. Have you heard of green hushing?
Green hushing, what's that?
Yeah, so it's a kind of reluctancy for businesses to say anything about sustainability because they're kind of scared of being kind of scrutinized for not doing it in the correct way.
Oh, that's interesting. So business who are actually they've taken steps towards sustainability, but they're not talking about it for fear of being called out or scrutinized, having to answer questions that they are not prepared or don't want the distraction of having to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is it's a kind of a rising issue with very real. I think it's just as damaging as greenwashing is as well in terms of reducing transparency into businesses. And ultimately, I think we want sustainable businesses to be able to shout about what they're doing and do well and grow and really become the new mainstream. So if those businesses aren't given the avenues and channels to communicate what they're doing, that's a real problem. And again, going back to our solution, that's really what we're trying to help them do and address too.
Yeah, so giving them not just permission to talk about it, but giving them a verified stamp, and avenues and channels through which to talk about the things that they're doing, the activities that they're doing that are promoting sustainability or furthering sustainability. Okay, green hushing, that's a new one for me. All right, so we do like to get really real, as I said, and when we were chatting before this, a lot of our audience are small business owners, and they've expressed what is really interesting and helpful for them is to understand how other businesses have gone through and overcome challenges. So for you in 2023, looking ahead just at this year, and I cannot believe we're at the end of Q1 already, but here we are. What are some of the biggest challenges that you guys have identified and are facing for 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well, there's obviously in the UK there is an economic downturn, and there's a lot of skepticism around kind of spending any money, and especially with what we're doing. I think lots of companies view what we're doing as a nice to have, I guess, as opposed to an absolute essential for business survival. When in fact we do view it as the latter. We do view what we're doing as something businesses really need to adopt to grow. And there is a sales incentive in terms of being able to effectively communicate your sustainability and attract the now 4 out of 5 shoppers who do consider sustainability when purchasing. So that's a challenge for us in terms of getting that messaging through, so businesses see what we're doing as an essential part of their strategy this year. So I think that's the main challenge at the moment. Another challenge, I think, is staying up with kind of new data, new regulation. The standards and framework that we have is quite extensive, and it needs a lot of, we ultimately want it to represent best practice, as that's where all of the integrity comes from. Without our standards being really accurate, really thorough, the whole thing loses its value. So we're working very hard and putting a huge amount of resource into those standards, working with around a dozen different partners across both environmental and social sustainability, for that expert input, to really make sure they reflect science-based targets and kind of the most recent data.
Yeah, I imagine that government relations and NGO relations and research is a big part of your workforce at Ethy.
Probably about 50%, 60% goes into
That
that
makes
sort of
sense.
thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just for everybody else to who's learning about Ethy for the first time, especially in the US, what is your business subscription model?
Yeah, so we have a tiered subscription model which is based on business size. So it's slightly more affordable for smaller brands, slightly more expensive for large brands, as you'd expect. And yeah, we've tried to make it a quite affordable price point. We're talking about kind of 50 to a few £100 a month, as opposed to other certifications who maybe charge several thousand a year, if not more. So yeah, we've tried to make it accessible to those smaller SMEs who we know are championing sustainability, and we want to be with them throughout the journey and throughout their kind of life as they grow, as they hopefully become part of that mainstream market.
And in terms of geographically, are you guys present and looking to expand in specific markets, or can we encourage all of our US businesses to go check out Ethy right now, or are you guys mainly in the UK?
So at the moment, we are focused on the UK. The next stop is the US, and it's on our 2023 roadmap. So we're looking at either Q3 or Q4 this year, to expand into the US. We have had some early discussions with potential US clients. So any kind of US listeners who feel like Ethy might be a good solution for their business, we'd be really keen for a conversation, just to begin kind of chatting and understanding more about your business and the market over there in the US.
Wonderful. Okay, great. And what are you most excited about this year?
I think it's just seeing how much impact we can have, just kind of growing the business, trying to motivate and incentivize people and other businesses to join the movement, and also helping businesses accelerate their own sustainability strategy. So we've figured out what we have is a really good marketing tool for businesses in terms of credibility, transparency, but it's also a really good way to incentivize them and get them on that journey, identifying new areas that they can grow into and kind of develop on the environmental and social side. So kind of, I really want to focus on that this year, and really having that kind of tangible impact that helps businesses ultimately become more sustainable.
Nice. Okay. And just to close out, we have about 4 or 5 questions that we ask everybody. I'll read through them and then I'll ask you them again one by one. So we ask everybody, and this is always super interesting for me to hear the answers. 3 questions: biggest success to date, biggest failure to date, and the most important lesson you've learned to date as an entrepreneur in your business. And then the next one: if you could get 85% of the world, so consumers, to adopt a single behavior, what would that be? And then we'll close out with, where can we find you? So let me go over those ones again. Biggest success to date, biggest failure to date, and the most important lesson you've learned to date.
Yeah, I think our biggest success has probably been building a really nice and good team who really kind of get behind the mission, align really well. We're not a massive team, there's 7 of us, but I think it's a really cohesive group of people who ultimately really enjoy what they're doing and kind of like coming into the office, speaking with us on a day-to-day basis, because without that, there's really no point. So I'd say that the team we've built is probably the biggest success so far. In terms of failures, there's been quite a few, I guess. I think we've had some quite big technical hiccups in terms of kind of down edges on the website and the technical front. Nothing that's been a showstopper as yet. So yeah, I think maybe a few kind of annoyed customers who've come on the early early kind of stages of the product, and it's perhaps not delivered on its intentions, which is to be expected. We quickly resolved the issues, but at the time it was pretty stressful.
We've all been there, yes, especially, yeah, technical products. Well, no, all products. We've all been there, especially when you feel so bad for those early adopters. And then the most important lesson you've learned to date.
Yeah, I think the most important lesson I've learned from a kind of entrepreneurial standpoint is the networking side of things. It's in terms of speaking to as many people as possible, whether they're kind of directly relevant to what you're doing or from an outside kind of space or sector. Just having as many conversations and getting more opinions, more perspectives, and absorbing that as much as possible. And it was something I probably didn't realize early enough. I've realized it recently. And I think LinkedIn's obviously kind of great for that. But also having kind of face-to-faces, which is kind of less common these days. I think it's a really good way to build up rapport, get to know people, and just, yeah, strengthen those relationships.
Is that something for you and your personality? Is that something that comes naturally to you, or is that something that you've had to, hone that muscle and really work at?
Definitely the latter. So it's I'm more introverted as a personality, so it's been a challenge. I enjoy it, but it takes a lot of energy. So it's something that I've had to work on, and I'm still working on it at the moment.
Okay. And if you could get 85% of the world to adopt a single behavior, what would that be?
So I think it would be being more kind of focused on reducing your waste and trying not to throw away as much as we currently do, which has a huge impact on kind of greenhouse gas emissions. Obviously, biodiversity is massively impacted by the waste that we throw away. So I think that would be the focus from a kind of personal standpoint. What can I do in my day-to-day life? Trying to buy a bit less and keep the things that we have in use, whether it's kind of hand-me-down clothes or just buying things that are made to last. So I think that would be my number one bit of advice to follow if everyone could.
Yeah, good one. Okay. And lastly, where can we find you in real life, online, social media? Where can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone kind of UK based, we're in London, central London, always open for a kind of face-to-face meeting. And then online, ethy.co.uk, for both people and also businesses who are interested in our solution. My email is callum@ethy.co.uk, so feel free to drop me an email. So yeah, basically anywhere.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. Well, great. It's been great to chat with you today. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you for everyone in the audience. We'll see you on B1.